Hi, my name is Robert Chelle with Chelle Law, and my firm assists physicians with employment contract issues. Today I'm going to speak about recruitment agreements and then kind of the interplay between the employment agreement that the physician will sign to the new job, and then kind of what is a recruitment agreement, and then the downsides, I guess, and upsides of it as well. So what is a recruitment agreement? So the Stark Law and anti-kickback laws allow for a hospital to provide certain financial incentives to a medical practice in their efforts to bring in a new physician into the area. And so what does that mean? So if a physician is, moving to a new job, either out of training or from somewhere else, most of the time it's with young physicians, or people newly out of training. They will sign an employment agreement with the practice itself. However, there are also some opportunities for a hospital in the area to essentially supplement the income of that physician for the first year, and also providing some other incentives as well. So you could have a recruitment agreement that will have an income guarantee. So they will essentially pay the medical practice a certain amount to supplement the physician's salary. They can provide moving expenses, a signing bonus, student loan repayment. They could also cover expenses from the practice associated with bringing the physician in. Most likely through overhead. So there's a lot of opportunity for a hospital to supplement a medical practice. So why do they do this? Well, it's possible that a medical practice simply couldn't financially afford to bring in a physician without kind of these supplements. Or it's also just a smart way for a practice to not have to pay as much money as they normally would. In most of the specialties that this works under, it would be someone who has to build up a practice. And most physicians who are moving into a new job are not very profitable for the first year or two. Once again, kind of specialty dependent and practice dependent. Are they replacing somebody? Are they coming in cold? Do they have any ties to the community? Like all those things kind of factor in. It normally takes 12 to 18 months for a practice to reach maturity. And so if you're in family care and you were to join a practice, you would continue to see more volume, for the first 12 to 18 months. So, all right. So what are the rules that kind of dictate what a hospital can do? So what are the conditions that need to be there? And I'm just going to go through the list. So one, there has to be a documented need in the area for the physician's specialty. It needs to be in writing. So there will be a contract given by the hospital to the physician and to the practice as well, and they'll both sign it. The physician must relocate their medical practice to the area. They must move into the geographic area served by the hospital. And so what is the geographic area? For the most part, it's the lowest number of contiguous zip codes from which the hospital draws at least 75% of its inpatients. So there will be a attachment at the back of every recruitment agreement that lists zip codes. And basically, the physician has to serve those zip codes for the amount of the recruitment agreement. The physician must move at least 25 miles into the geographic area. And there are also some exceptions for rural communities. And then also those residents that have been in training that want to stay in the area. So there are a few minor exceptions, but for the most part, the things I just went through are what dictate whether a hospital can provide the recruitment agreement. So what does the recruitment agreement look like? It's a contract like an employment contract, and dictates the terms of what they provide, and then most importantly, what the forgiveness period is. So the hospital does this so they can bring in a specialty, and then down the road, or I guess initially, they will get downstream revenue from referrals from this physician. I mean, that's the whole point of that, bringing them in. So even though, let's just say they provide an income guarantee and a signing bonus and overhead expenses for the first year, which is pretty standard. Well, then they will require some kind of forgiveness period, which means the physician has to stay in the area for a number of years, usually 3, sometimes 4. And then each month that they're in that area providing care, a fraction will be deducted from the overall loan amount. So let's say a hospital sends, $200,000 to the medical practice. Well, that $200,000 amount will then, after the first income guarantee period, which will be usually 1 year, that $200,000 will then be, let's just say it's, a 3-month forgiveness. So 1/36 of that 200,000 will then be forgiven every month, and which means no one has to pay it back. So as long as the physician will stay for the forgiveness period, in this case, if it was 3 years, then no one will owe any money back to the hospital. The hospital, like I said, will, hopefully gain more by having that physician in the community and utilizing the downstream revenue from referrals into the network, which should more than cover whatever they paid out to bring the physician into the community. The downside to the physician, one, depending upon how the agreement is written, if they do leave the area, then they're responsible for that amount of money. Now, usually it will be like joint responsibility between the practice and the physician. But for the most part, if the physician leaves early, they're going to have to pay back that money. And for some physicians and some specialties, it can be a significant amount of money. I've seen, up to $500,000 after the first year. Now that's specialty dependent, obviously, but it could be a lot of money. And let's just say the relationship goes south with whoever the employer is, and maybe there aren't opportunities in the area for the physician to switch to a new group and continue on in the geographic region. It can be a big problem. The benefits of a recruitment agreement, one, if the job couldn't exist, the medical practice couldn't afford to bring in a new physician into the area, then clearly the recruitment agreement, is creating the job opportunity for the physician. So it may be necessary. It's a no-brainer for a medical practice. They essentially can have an entire year of physician salary supplemented by a hospital. They absolutely should, would normally take advantage of that if they could. And some practices are more savvy than others in utilizing that. Some of those agreements will require that, and they should, there'll be no non-compete. If the physician has to stay within a certain area in order to not violate the agreement, and then the contract is terminated with the original employer, but there's a non-compete, which forces them out of that area, well, that is a huge problem for the physician. So most recruitment agreements will prohibit the employer from placing a non-compete into the agreement. So that's one thing to look for. So hopefully that was kind of a little breakdown of recruitment agreements and Stark and kickback statutes. It could be a valuable tool for a physician, but it could also be a disaster if it's not worded properly, or that kind of the employer has thought of all the permutations if the physician leaves the practice. If you have any questions about recruitment agreements, feel free to contact my firm. You can call us at the number listed below in the description, or if you have any other questions, you can always contact us through our website, chellelaw.com, CHELLE law.com. And hopefully that was helpful. Thanks.